All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Yes, hello all. It is a delight to witness, as you are witnessing, the shift from democratic republic to a tyranny. It happens so quickly. It has been forecast by one of the award-winning journalists who will lead off our show. I'm so excited. David Cay Johnston will join us in just seconds. Thank all of you. My thanks to all of you for your emails, for your correspondences related to yesterday's show. I really was just so angry that I came on hot and I, in an unvarnished way, told you that I think this is the rise of despotism in America. And I don't know what the answer is, and I don't see the shaft of light necessarily that will be able to affix ourselves to. But if anybody does see that shaft of light, it will be David Cay Johnston. And also on the legal side, David Katz joins us today. And I'm really excited that he is joining us on a day that I didn't think we were going to have David Cay Johnston. So I booked Katz sort of as an emergency measure, and I am now delighted that we're going to have David. So before we get started, please smash the like button. That's what we have to do in this YouTube universe. Welcome, Kim. Welcome, Tony. And now to the award-winning, Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist, multiple best-selling author, and a guy who knows Trump so well. But when it comes to governance and the courts, that's another area of his expertise. He's David Cay Johnston. Hello, sir.
Hello, greetings from the Central Valley of California.
Stay inside today. It's going to be hot as Hades out there. Yeah. Look, I'll just turn it over to you. These are shocking decisions preceded even yesterday with the overturn of Chevron deference. We know the overturn of Roe. But what was handed down by the court yesterday, David, was truly, I think, even wouldn't you say that you yourself wouldn't have thought that they would have leaned in as aggressively to this immunity decision?
This is far worse than I expected. I expected them to send it back to a lower court, which they did. But this is far worse. Let me start off by pointing out something that I've not seen reported anywhere. This court, in its most recent Second Amendment decision, said that court decisions and the law has to be based on what was traditional in America. And on your show, I said, I guess we're going to bring back wife beating and other awful things from the past. This decision pays no deference to 240 plus years of America. Their concern is, in the future, some president might misuse prosecution, implying, of course, that that's the case here when that's utter nonsense. And the way this decision is worded, Trump is now making a colorable argument that his Stormy Daniels case should be thrown out. Now, of course, he agreed to pay her off before the election, but some of the payoffs occurred after he was president, and he's going to argue that those are unreviewable. I don't think that will succeed, but it tells you how much chaos and uncertainty the court has created. What the court has said now is any core function of the president is utterly unreviewable. Well, pardons are a core function. So the president could say, pay me $1 million and I'll let you out of prison, and that would no longer be a crime under this Supreme Court decision. The good example of how they have not thought this through. And I'm not the only one saying this, by the way. A number of legal scholars are saying things. And let me remind the audience that while I'm not a lawyer, I've been on the faculty at Syracuse University College of Law, teaching legal principles and theory and history for 15 years.
But this is a shocking thing that you've just said, which is that essentially the presidency could be open for business that way.
They've criminalized the presidency. That's exactly what they've done. And this fits with a pattern. First, the Supreme Court in the McDonald case, maybe 8 years ago now, where the governor of Virginia received all sorts of gifts, what the Constitution calls emoluments, the use of a $400,000 Ferrari and trips for his wife to buy whatever she wanted. The court held that that was not a crime and threw out his conviction on the concept that there was no quid pro quo. It wasn't, I'll give you the use of the Ferrari if you do this thing. And what that did is just opened up bribery to a wink and a nod. Now, in their most recent decision, a couple of days ago, the court said that making a gift after the fact is not a crime. So think about that. Mark, you're the president of the United States. I need a favor from you. Mark, do me this favor, and I'll be very grateful. You'll see how immensely grateful I will be. You then do some corrupt thing for me, and I go, oh, here's $1 million. The court has now said, nope, that's not any longer reviewable. The entire point of our revolution in the 18th century, the entire point of our Constitution, not the original American government, the Articles of Confederation, because it didn't have a president, but the Constitution we've lived under since 1787, is that there's accountability. And when I was teaching the law of the ancient world, one of the things my students would learn is I would say, all right, and so this person violated this conduct in ancient Greece, and if they follow the law, the punishment is, and everybody would shout, we kill you. That's how serious accountability was when democracy began in Greece almost 2,500 years ago. We have now, through this court, created unbelievable opportunities for corruption, lack of review. So think about this other point. If the president is consulting the Justice Department, none of that may ever be entered in the court record, no matter what happens. So there is something known as the crime fraud exception. If you have a lawyer, your conversations are confidential unless you are conspiring to commit a crime, in which case the crime fraud exception applies. You're not allowed to use legal cover privilege to commit crimes. Under this decision, that's exactly what can, and certainly if Trump is in office, will happen. And this decision, though, most importantly in my mind, totally contradicts the whole basis of their Second Amendment rulings. There has to be a historical basis. We've never had a decision like this. And this court is the court of unaccountability. We are not
also in your
accountable.
In your comments, and it seems so clear in their decision, they've not only allowed for corruption, it seems as though you've just detailed in some broad stroke way the ways in which they are, in a sense, encouraging corruption.
Oh, they are. I think that they've opened the door to corruption. And what that leads me to think about, and I want to be clear with the audience, this is just sheer speculation, okay? But, you know, Mitt Romney said some time ago, a lot of members of my party, the Republican Party, don't believe in democracy. I think it's been clear for a long time that Sam Alito and Clarence Thomas do not believe in democracy. And I think what they've done here under Chief Justice Roberts, and he's the one I'm most shocked at because we all thought he was an institutionalist. He has a point of view. He was certainly for years in his decisions signaling, bring this kind of case in the future and you'll get, likely to get the result that you want. They are setting up for the end of American democracy. And if Donald Trump gets back to the White House, he's already announced, I'll be dictator on day one. Today, he was out with more statements about revenge and retribution. And under this decision, he could tell the Justice Department, I want you to go arrest all the Democratic Party leaders of the Congress. And it would be unreviewable that he made that decision. Now, they could go to court and with a petition of habeas corpus, what am I being arrested for? But Trump's ordering it, we couldn't even examine it because that would be a discussion with the Justice Department. And this is, Dred Scott is no longer the worst decision in the history of the Supreme Court. Lochner is no longer the worst business decision. This is beyond the pale, and I'm thinking hard about what I'm going to teach my law students in the next class about this. because I can't say, well, you can disagree with the court, but there was some rational reasoning for why they did this. This is a front-end assault on the American constitutional system.
The idea that you have to distinguish somehow between unofficial and official presidential acts, that seemed to me to be maybe tortured reasoning for why you wanted to hold the clock for Trump. But it seemed as though, to me, and again, this is why I ask you, like, okay, I can see maybe how you'd want to distinguish between those things. I mean, I think that it was the case in that Nixon case where he was being, civilly sued back in the 70s. But it's the fact that they really just used that as kind of the door through which they passed the rest of this stuff.
Well, in fact, if this decision had been in effect in 1974, Richard Nixon would not have resigned. We would never have gotten the tapes that absolutely established criminality. And when he told Bob Haldeman, his chief of staff, get the FBI off my back and get them onto these other people, under this ruling, we would have no right to know that. They have created a zone of criminality in the White House. And there's no sugarcoating this. There's no, somewhere in here, there's something good and decent about it. It does not exist. They've also ensured, I think, that the insurrection case will not go to trial before November 5th. Now, Judge Chutkan in Washington, who's handling the January 6th case, she is a very serious, no-nonsense, tight court judge. And so she could schedule a hearing. She could do it today for 30 days from now. And we will get, if that happens, unless the court intervenes again with stay orders, a sort of mini trial about what Trump did and didn't do on January 6th. But I think, make no mistake about it, the majority on this court have attacked the American democracy. And I have said for many years, long before Trump, because of the annual reports of the Chief Justice of the United States, John Glover Roberts, that we've got too much work to do. We can't do all the work that needs to be done. I have called for 100 more appellate court judges, a couple hundred district court trial judges, and expanding the Supreme Court to 13, 15, or 17. I think 15 is the optimal number because that's how many subordinate courts have to be directly reported to. And assuming that Trump does not get back in the White House, I think bill number 1 in the next Congress should be adding 6 seats to the U.S. Supreme Court and appointing serious legal scholars who are moderates and who are relatively young, people who should be in office when I'm dead.
The movie version of this has the new powers now conferred to the president falling to the existing president, Joe Biden. And in that movie, and I'll tell you that I've received a lot of emails from our audience saying, why doesn't Joe Biden just do blankety, blankety, blank now? Arrest Donald Trump as an enemy of the state. Arrest all the Supreme Court justices as enemies of the state. It's a Trumpian thing to do. It's not beyond the pale for Trump. But again, it does feel like a movie. But under this new Supreme Court ruling, Biden might be able to get away with some version of that.
I think he actually could get away with it, but he's not going to do that. That's
right.
Not who he is.
Right.
Biden has a very deep respect for the Constitution. When he disagrees with the court, he says so, but he follows the orders of the court. Syracuse University College of Law graduate. He's simply not going to do that. But the underlying concern here should be what will happen if Trump gets into office. Now, there are all these calls that are going on for Biden to resign from the campaign. That may happen. I think it would be a terrible mistake because who are the Democrats going to run and who has the right knowledge? But what the Biden people absolutely must do are 3 things. He's got to stop the antagonism to the press. That will be very hard for him. Joe's never particularly liked talking to reporters, not as a senator or vice president or president. Peter Baker, the chief White House correspondent and a very serious scholar of the presidency, has never gotten an interview with President Biden. And this holding journalists in contempt, which is what Al Gore did in the 2000 campaign. Well, George Bush was, hey, how you doing, Slim and George? And, did your wife have that baby? Was it a boy or a girl? Well, Gore would go, I'm told I have to answer questions from you people. They need to shift to that. Secondly, he needs to be out there showing that he is clearly articulating issues and he simply had a bad night. And they should be putting up in ads compilations of all of these talks where Donald is going along speaking like I am, and all of a sudden, there are dozens of these, and you don't see them. Why are they on nightly news on the networks talking about Joe Biden Thursday night with no comparable discussion of Donald Trump's repeated gibberish? And the third thing they have to do is stop talking about details. This is an election about, do you want to continue to live in a free society, or do you want to live under a man who's declared that retribution, revenge, and dictatorship are what he wants? That should be the whole campaign. You don't particularly like me as Joe Biden. The choice is you continue to live in a free society, or you're going to live under a dictatorship. And I'll say that if we get a dictatorship, it won't happen overnight, but down that road in every dictatorship in the world leads the same thing: firing squads.
Tony,
it's just a matter of time, and if it goes quickly, I'm going to be one of the people who's lined up on a wall.
Well, it's not going to go that quickly, David Cay
Probably
Johnston.
not, because Donald is a wuss, to use the vernacular. He's always been a wuss.
He's concerned with
fire people. He makes other people fire them.
I mean, your books have, I think, communicated so effectively along the way, ways in which he insulates himself from that stuff. As you say, he puts a layer between the firing and himself, but also he cares about the look. I mean, firing squads are a bad look. I mean, He feels it may be more of a poison thing. It might feel more like a Russia kind of thing. I wanted to play for David Cay Johnston the Bannon. The clip from Bannon. Did I have Tony, do you have that? I don't know if I gave you a timestamp on it. Bannon essentially comes out and, no, that's this is also good, the Supreme Court stuff, but I think we've already kind of covered that. Here's Steve Bannon. This is Bannon a bit with Tapper. I feel like the best stuff is beyond the very beginning, but go ahead. Just let's do a needle drop and see. I want your reaction, because Bannon clearly is the architect of so much in the first Trump administration. I think Trump, too, would also lean on Bannon. Go ahead, Tony, please.
To serve 4 months for contempt of Congress. We decided to go see him in the basement of his Capitol Hill townhouse, the place where he broadcasts for 4 hours a day a show called
Live on TV. Can I call you back? I'll call you back, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, that's Trump calling him during his show.
I don't want to talk details, but we keep in pretty good contact. A lot of the things we talk about end up in his speeches, so we talk frequently enough.
Steve Bannon's worldview echoes loudly in Trump's speeches, with retribution, a central theme of Bannon's war room, a cornerstone of the Trump campaign.
In 2016, I declared, I am your voice. Today I add, I am your warrior, I am your justice. And for those who have been wronged and betrayed, I am your retribution. I am your retribution.
Some of those who served Trump and crossed him say they're worried. Stephanie Grisham, who was the communications director, the press secretary, communications director for chief of staff for the First Lady.
You're not talking about people like that. That's ridiculous.
She says that she's worried about being charged with treason, that she could be disappeared someday.
That's absurd. I'm talking about people in positions of authority. For instance,
Andrew McCabe, the former deputy FD, he says he might have to leave the country.
He ought to be very worried. He's definitely going to be investigated. So is Comey. So is Esper. I believe Milley will. People, look at what happened in. Look what happened.
Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs.
Yes,
staff.
because look at the we don't know what conversations he had outside the military chain of command when he's chairman of the Joint Chiefs, when he talked to the Chinese, when he talked to Nancy Pelosi. We have to investigate all that. If we haven't done anything, you shouldn't worry.
Well, they're worried because Trump and you are talking about retribution. You're talking
about. It's not retribution at all. First off,
wait. Those were his words, not my words. He says your retribution.
And what he says by retribution, he said, like he said last night on the debate stage, his retribution is a very successful, more successful second term. What we're saying is we want justice. We want to have full investigations, and then if criminal charges come up, then criminal charges come up.
I mean, okay, very good. I just wanted you to get. He really scares me because I think he really is. He reminds me of an Eastern Bloc kind of view toward power.
Steve Bannon was the one who said we're going to deconstruct the administrative state. Now, they were successful with that in a couple of areas. They've seriously weakened environmental laws. They almost got away with bomb trains. There's a whole chapter in one of my 3 Trump books about this plan to allow trains that are carrying cargo subject to exploding to go through highly populated areas like Philadelphia at 40 miles an hour. When the research, the industry acknowledged was it would be the equivalent of setting off a nuclear bomb bigger than Hiroshima or Nagasaki in one of those cities. And they were going to let them do it because of the support they got from the richest man in Japan. Steve Bannon has made it very clear that they are seeking retribution and revenge. And remember, Donald Trump has repeatedly said that his life philosophy is a single word: revenge. He also says he's a Christian, even though he calls Christians fools, idiots, and schmucks. You cannot be a Christian and believe in revenge. If there's anything that is totally rejected in the New Testament, it is revenge. And Donald says he's a revenge person. So this is a very serious problem here. And people in this election, if they haven't decided, they need to understand that if we put Donald Trump back in the White House, he won't win the popular vote. Doesn't matter what happens. He's not going to win the popular vote. But if he wins enough electoral college votes to get in, that is, you should just figure that's the end of your liberty in America. The American democracy is over. Now, things don't happen, as you said, overnight. From the collapse, from the transfer of power in ancient Rome, from a republic to a dictatorship, it took about 40 years. But a lot of things happened right off the bat. And Trump's made clear what's going to happen right after the bat. You know, they're going to find ways to prosecute their political enemies. They're going to round up using the military, which would be illegal under this law. But all Trump has to do is consult with the Justice Department, and now we can't discuss it. They're going to round up people who appear to be Latino or Muslim. And if you think that a lot of American citizens won't be wrongfully deported in a mass operation like that, where there's almost no review, you haven't thought this through at all. I mean, this is a real fight. Do you want to be in a free society, or do you want to be in a dictatorship? You know, in 2017, when I was the publisher of DC Report, we ran, starting then, about 40 articles by or about Bandy Lee. She is the doctor of the medical doctor psychiatrist who was a professor of psychiatry at Yale, and who said Donald Trump is deeply mentally ill. I talked to Bandy a couple of days ago, and I said, explain to me now what's happening with all of these people who are looking the other way. And she said, well, Donald's kind of mental illness is a public health issue. There's mental public health. So it isn't just somebody sneezing on you or touching the water faucet to spread the cholera. His mental illness is infecting the thought process of millions and millions of Americans. And I talked to some other people who study authoritarianism, and they absolutely agree that this is what happens. A lot of people adopt the mental state of the leader. And if you doubt that, when Stalin died, this mass murderer, Stalin, thousands and thousands and maybe 1 million people got on trains and tried to go to Moscow for our dear brother Stalin. This is a real serious fundamental human problem. It's the reason our Constitution was written with checks and balances to provide accountability, and the Supreme Court has just thrown them out the window.
Exactly. That's gone. David, such a great surprise, maybe the surprise of my summer, to be able to talk to you today about this. Thank you for taking time out of your vacation to be with us. And let us know, fire a flare when you're available again. We can't wait to talk
next
more.
week I'll be back in Western New York.
All right, great.
It's a lot cooler.
Yes, stay inside. Safe travels, sir. David Cay Johnston, everyone. Thanks, David.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Wow, what a treat to talk to David Cay Johnston today. As, boy, he states it so starkly and cleanly, and it's a lot of what we've talked about before, which is the dismantling of the U.S. government. Never thought I'd really be saying it and watching it happen. And I know that when we've said it in the past, there's a sense that, you guys are exaggerating, and look at you guys. I mean, you're so blowing this out of proportion. I mean, you're always the same, running with, with your hair on fire. No, you just saw it. I mean, it's literally happened. It literally has happened. And it's an extraordinary thing. I mean, it's like the corruption sweepstakes at the Supreme Court. I mean, who would have thought? You've got one guy who is traveling around on these insane vacations, private jets, accepting deals where his mom gets the house purchased by the very person who has actual business with the court. He's showered with gifts like a game show contestant. And then he claims that
the price is right at the Supreme Court.
Right. I just like to, I come from regular stock, right? I mean, that's, and then.
Hey, as long as he takes the gifts after he does the favor, it's okay.
I come from regular stock.
Yeah. But then you have the other justices, and there it's an ideological corruption so far. I mean, there are aspects of even Alito, I think, that involve a kind of monetary and financial corruption. But essentially, it's all part of a corruption associated with philosophy, a plan, a strategy for the future. And in this case, really covering the trail and the rear of Donald Trump. I can't see it too clearly. It looks like a $10 super sticker from Hula Steph.
Yeah.
Come on, Hula Steph.
Big shout out.
Big shout out. Thank you. I must tell you quickly, and I want to talk to Spencer Christian, I think, here in a second, because the heat is a record. We're a crowd-funded show. And I know we talk about once in a while, this sponsor of this newscast, and that sponsor of that newscast. Those are really small sponsorships. We're really grateful to have them. But we can't run the show on that. We can't run the show for a day on that. So your contributions mean everything. I mean, we don't have the KGO infrastructure, the way in which they had everything sort of built in. We don't have that anymore. So we've had to build it ourselves, and the costs really are a huge encumbrance. And so encumbrance is a ding word. And so I count on you, the audience. We work really hard on the show to bring you guests. I've got a new guest for you today, an award-winning investigative journalist, and we will continue to try to bring you more. But we need you, if you can, to be part of our Patreon community. You can click through the Patreon on the bottom of every video, and PayPal is also live. If that's your jam, get onto PayPal. The link is live under every video, the main show and also all the videos that break out. And please share the show as well. Really appreciate it. Stan Pollock, CPA, my favorite CPA. He is CPAing today, and it's 25 for us.
Big shout out.
Mark, very sorry for your loss. Thank you, Stan. I lost my dad 2 weeks ago. Very tough. And it's weird, I'll just say this and then we'll move on. And thank you, William Geit, for a $3 super sticker. Big shout out.
Big shout out.
Thank you. I was, okay, I don't know how many more of these we have, and then I'll get to what I was saying. Trevor Starr in Hollywood is maybe the biggest star that is in Hollywood. Do we agree, everybody? Yes. 10-10, couldn't Biden use the power the Supreme Court just gave him to simply reverse it? Well, he could use the power the Supreme Court just gave him to declare members of the court corrupt and enemies of the state and have them arrested. He absolutely could do that. He would talk to his Justice Department, okay? We'd go through, but that's what he would do. That's perfectly legal under this latest Supreme Court decision allows for every manner of that kind of thing. But Joe Biden isn't going to do that because I don't even know if Joe Biden knows what time it is, okay? So I'm just being honest. I'm starting to catch wind of a new reality when it comes to Joe Biden that is not too, shall we say, friendly toward his mental acuity. Now, he might be on par with Trump, but I think he might be a little ahead of Trump also. Look, I've told you before, I'll take Joe Biden on life support over Donald Trump. I don't care what kind of shape he's in. I don't care, all right? I mean, I think administrative crew around Joe Biden can still get another 4 years done. I mean, you can prop him up like Weekend at Bernie's for me, but for the American people and for him to win an election, he will have to go out and do stumping. He will have to go out and say something. And I don't know what he can do. Now, he did put together a pretty good stump speech on the following Friday, the next day. So he's capable of it, maybe. But for him to hatch some plan where he, uses his newly conferred powers in some, dark Brandon way, I don't see that happening right now.
I don't think Democrats play that way.
Yeah. And you could, it really, even you saw David Cay Johnston, if Democrats were to regain control and win the election, et cetera, and they were to expand the court or try to expand the court, the idea would be, in David's mind, to put on clear-thinking jurists who are fair-minded. Now, that is just, you might hear that articulated version of things from the GOP, but then they put on these clear partisans, right? I mean, one of whom is literally sleeping with the person who is associated with trying to overthrow the government and the results of an election. I wanted to thank you for Stan for your thoughts about my dad, and it means a lot. And I'm going to post a special obit for him. I had planned to do it already, but then I got sick, and it got really sick, and then got really, really sick, and so I haven't done that yet, but I will. So I would love for you to know a little something about him. It'll be short, but I think it'll be enjoyable, and it'll be some funny stuff in it too, so I promise you that's all still to come. Smash the like button like a boss!
Smashed it with your iron rod!
It's hot as Hades out there, baby. It's rough out there. Damn. I don't know how long I can hang on. Smash it with your iron rod. Do it while you can, and subscribe to the show. Come on, everybody. How about a subscription?
Ladies and gentlemen,
once in a
I'm
while?
Shadow Stevens. This is the Mark Thompson Show. Keep it to yourself.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Kim, what is our story? Do I have America's weatherman with me or not?
You have America's weatherman.
I've got America's weatherman with me. Come on.
I mean, I don't want to say it, but I would say the greatest weatherman to ever have walked the earth. No offense. I'm sorry. I know, but is it true? It's true.
I blame you.
I may have to yellow card Kim.
Again?
I can't believe it.
Kim, how are you?
How could you, knowing my background, do you understand? I don't think you really do understand. So I may let you pass on this.
What if I call you the greatest talk show host who ever lived, and let him have weather, okay? Just let him have it.
Try to cover your awful statement right now with this with the faint praise associated with kissing up to me. The reality is that I was functioning at the highest levels as an on-air meteorologist. I was talked about for the Good Morning America job. I was outright offered the weekend Good Morning America job.
Who got the job? Monday through Friday, full time. I'm just saying.
Wow.
I know.
Then you don't know this, but I was offered the Today Show. Yeah. All of us. So
nobody watches that. Who watches that? Everybody watches ABC.
I'm yellow carding her. I'm yellow carding Kim. That is a yellow card.
What?
Yeah. She is yellow carded.
I'm proudly wearing my yellow card. Proudly.
Because she went out of her way to insult me. And anyway, that's my background in a galaxy far, far away. Many years ago, I was an on-air meteorologist, just as and I already shower this guy with incredible praise. You don't need to go over the top to praise him more unless you're just trying to hurt me. And I think that's what was happening there, and that's why you're being yellow carded. And I'll remind you, if you're yellow carded again, that's a red card, and you're done. Okay, so
The Mark Thompson Show.
He is America's weatherman. How about it for Spencer Christian, everybody?
Oh, you guys are cracking me up.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry you got to see mommy and daddy fight over you, Spencer.
I feel like I'm walking into the middle of a family feud here, but it's okay.
I yield to no man in my love and affection and my respect for you. But I don't think it's necessary, as Kim has just done, to insult me on the way to praising you. Now, as I've said, I look to you because you have a great experience. You know what's going to happen. It is insanely hot. The Central Valley bearing the worst of it from what I can see. But I wonder if you can give us a sense of, A, how hot it's going to get, the peak of the heat, and then how long this is going to last. And by the way, this is a heat dome. I guess it's not just California, right?
Right. That's exactly right. So we're under a heat dome. And by the way, I will borrow your words. It is hot as Hades out there.
There you go. Right. That's all right.
And because it's a heat dome, that's one of the reasons, of course, it's going to last so long, because there's no disturbance coming down from the northwest to take a bite out of this big high pressure system or nudge it along. So this is day 1 or day 2, if you count yesterday, of a 6 or 7 day heat wave for the Bay Area. The peak of it here, Mark, is today and tomorrow. We have numerous locations in the inland areas of the Bay Area today and tomorrow that will have high temperatures ranging from 108 to about 112, possibly higher.
Wow.
In the Central Valley, parts of the Central Valley, it's more like 112 to 115 or 116 in the hottest places. And these are the official reporting stations. As you know, you go to some of the small towns where there's no official, reading being taken. It could be 116, 118 over the next couple of days in parts of the Central Valley. It's just, it's almost unbearable.
So if this is the second day of it, then I'm sorry, you think it's going to be 8 days?
Well, I count yesterday as the first day of the heat wave, because there were a couple of locations yesterday that hit 100 degrees here in the Bay Area. But most of the other on-air meteorologists here in the Bay Area are counting today as day 1. So if we do that, this is day 1 of 6 days of triple-digit heat in the Bay Area. And it could be more than 6 days. Right now, we're looking at the likelihood of many locations topping out at or above 100 degrees as late into the forecast period as next Monday. Right. So if you count today as day 1, that would be 7 days. Yeah.
Wow. We're used to the Central Valley being very hot. But that is, when I say very hot, but also very much hotter than a lot of places closer to the coast. But these are extreme conditions. Hey, Tony, I was just going to say, Tony, you have maybe a map of the West. There it is. I knew he'd.
Oh, here we go. Yeah. Talking about. So, Death Valley 118, but look at Palm Springs 112. But Fresno and Bakersfield likely hit 106 today. Sacramento 110, San Jose 100. Today and again, as I said, today and tomorrow are the peak of the.
That's the good news. Things may cool a bit. But cool is sort of one of those weird words to use in a situation like this. Tony, is there another map also that shows the extent to which this heat covers the West? Because I know in places like Las Vegas and in Arizona and New Mexico. This is, I think, if you got because Arizona, Nevada, and California are just brutal right now.
Yeah, they are. And even you talk about the cooling, Mark. Even as these extreme temperatures start to ease a bit, we're still talking about high temperatures over 100 almost every day in the 7-day forecast period. So today is the peak of the heat here in the Bay Area, where we'll see 108 to 112. But then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday we'll see 104, 106, 105 until this thing finally breaks. Early next week, we think, right? Tuesday, maybe.
Is this, to use the, by now hackneyed expression, but is this the new normal? These kinds of extreme weather events, and I know that there is a hurricane that you can maybe give us an update on, but these kinds of extreme weather events that are becoming more extreme, even the tropical weather events are becoming more extreme because the water is so much hotter all over the globe.
So true. Yeah, so there are 3 components to this thing. Or 3 parts to the answer. Yes, these extreme weather events are becoming more frequent. Yes, they're becoming more extreme, and yes, they are a longer duration now than these kinds of events in the past. Now, the last time, and I'll get to Beryl in just a second, but the last time we had a heat wave this intense here in the Bay Area was only 2 years ago. Not quite 2 years ago. It was September of 2022. So 21 months ago. These extreme events more frequent, more intense, and of longer duration. Now, Hurricane Beryl, yesterday was the earliest we had ever seen a Category 4 hurricane in the Atlantic. Now it's a Category 5, so this is obviously the earliest we've recorded a Category 5 hurricane in the Atlantic. The maximum sustained winds in this storm, 165 miles an hour with gusts to 200 miles an hour. That's almost impossible to imagine.
Yeah, I mean, this really is just breaking new ground. The existing measurement scales in which these various weather events are classified, they are changing because of this. There is the projected path of Beryl.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But
it'll deal, I guess, what they call a glancing blow, but it may be something way more serious than what we think of as a glancing to the Dominican Republic and Haiti. But it looks like Jamaica may get really blasted by this storm. What are they projecting? Wednesday morning or Thursday morning on that? Tomorrow morning, yeah. And as you accurately pointed out, it's the warming of the ocean waters that also contributes, largely to the intensity of these hurricanes, and to just normal heat waves like the one we have now, because the ocean waters are warmer than they've ever been before.
It's just wild, Spencer Christian. But there is no man who can lead us through it like you. And I'm excited that you jumped on with us today. I literally just put up the bat beam to Spencer, I think it was last night. And he said, yeah, I'd love to come on. So
always happy to join you.
Yeah, really the best, pal.
Happy to have Kim heap praise on me.
Well, she can heap praise without. I've already done I do the praising. I do the intros. I was heaping praise, and she can heap praise without insulting the host. I mean, she likes to bite the hand that feeds her, and I don't know, man. At some point, might bite back. You're the best, pal. We'll talk to you soon. Spencer Christian on ABC 7 there in the San Francisco Bay Area with us whenever we want. Love the guy. Right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
All right.
He's so good. Love him.
Yeah. I also wanted to recognize a new Patreon member who I'm very excited to welcome, Jessica.
What?
Yeah, that's right, Jessica. Jessica, I want to give you a big, hearty shout out.
Big shout out.
And a thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jessica. It's Wimbledon. We like the little British thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining our Patreon world. You can find us, as I say, on Patreon. Under every video, there's a click through, and you be part of our community that supports us. It was wrong. It was stupid. I'm trying to be a better person, says Kim, according to Brandon, because of her school. It's true.
He's doing it for the hard work for me. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't count from Brandon. It
does.
No, it does not.
Uh-oh. Are you going to red card me again?
Sure
Yellow card
does?
me?
Well, I mean, really, I don't know.
I mean, he wrote it. It counts. It's an apology.
It doesn't count as an apology for you when somebody else does it.
Oh.
Well, I'll ask you in the case of your son.
Yeah.
Your son gets angry.
Yeah.
He takes a baseball bat and he trashes your room.
That's violent.
You're angry about it.
Right.
He's angry about it and petulant, which is a ding word. And he's obstinate, which I could see him being now that I get to know his mom a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And he won't apologize. But one of his best friends comes to you and says, he told me privately, though, he really doesn't feel good about it. Would you be okay with that as the apology?
No, but you can't force an apology. It has to come from the heart.
Right. So it wouldn't count as an apology, right?
Yeah, you apologize when you're ready to apologize.
Right, exactly. So in other words, that wouldn't count.
No, I guess it wouldn't. I guess it wouldn't count.
All right. Thank you very much. Moving on. Thank you, Kim. You can check breaking news right now if you'd like.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Thank you, Mark, for all you do, says Sandy. Big shout out to Sandy. Thank you for all you do, Sandy.
Big shout out.
$5 super chat. Flo says we need the hang on a second. I can't read these today.
The NM show for Nikki Maduro, the MT show, Mark Thompson, and the after party in current times like these. Not just politics, but the weather too. Big up, he says.
Oh, that's really good. Flo. What up, Flo?
Big shout out.
Really appreciate Flo Galvez. Appreciate that. How about my Lucy McAllister also with a super sticker? Big shout out and a $20 super sticker.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it quite.
Thank you so much.
So much. Angela Silva with a $10 super sticker. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you so much.
Oh my God.
I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry.
I'm not going to cry, but I am close today. What is it, Tony?
The one that we need the one super chat that came after hours, like right at the end of the show. So there you go.
Yes, this is important.
Yeah.
No, the Texas Rangers, is that who they are? The ones who'd never leave anybody on the field, on the battlefield? I think the American forces always say they never leave anybody on the battlefield.
That was the United States Marines, never leave a man down or man behind or whatever.
Can we find out, please?
Google it.
Does somebody know? There is one branch of the service that is really known. I think it's the Rangers, but it might be the Marines, as Kim says. But anyway, it's a really special thing. And, they'll go in the heart and the teeth of the battle to rescue the body of a fallen comrade there on the field of battle. And they'll pull them back. And just as they do, I want you to know that there is no contribution that comes in after we get off the air that we don't recognize. And during the credit roll yesterday, or right as the credits were rolling, this came in memoriam. David Mills for $20. And I didn't, obviously because I was off the air, get a chance to recognize it yesterday.
Big shout out.
We just, made the point that we wanted to get to you today. So thank you. Big shout out to you. Thank you, everybody. Smash the like button like a boss if you
with
would.
your iron rod.
We'll do a little news from Kim. There's some breakers. Oh, do I have Jefferson, though?
I think
Let
you
me
do.
get to Jefferson.
I think
Okay.
you got to go right to him, yeah.
Okay. We'll try to we'll get some Kim news in before the end of the show. But right now,
The Mark Thompson Show.
this guy was the tech writer for USA Today for years, left them, started his own thing called PhotoWalks TV, but still has a big hand in the world of technology, and so he comes to us on Tech Tuesdays. He's Jefferson Graham. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Mark. Hi, Kim. Hi, Tony.
All right. Nice to see you.
Same here. Remember when last we met? Wasn't I in rural Wyoming, standing on the street?
Yeah, you were being actually yelled at and cursed by a woman who's...
No, that was in Montana. Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the one that I remember, and that was a better one.
Get off my front step.
Nothing gets better than that. I mean, that was terrific. Like, they should all be like that. My first weather job in a galaxy far, far away, as I was saying many, many years ago, was because a lady was yelling at me to get off her boat because I thought it was an empty boat. And I was walking from this empty boat down onto the dock. And she said, "What are you doing here?" And people remembered it. And people from all over the station came down to the office to watch. And I ad-libbed a bunch of stuff that was funny. And that's how I got the job. I loved you because the sweetness of you came out in that moment because you were trying to show her that you weren't actually photographing her plays. But she didn't understand, or care to understand. And that was what made that moment so funny. So what do you have for us today? What's happening in the world of technology? There's a new Apple phone coming out. I think there's all kinds of, there's a 3D component to it, as I saw.
Well, there's a whole bunch of new phone announcements happening in the next few weeks. Samsung is introducing their new phones in Paris next week. And then Google is announcing their new phones in August. Both of them are trying to get a jump on Apple, which will announce their new phone about a week after Labor Day. Usually Samsung and Google go after Apple, but what you're seeing is the AI wars. Apple is introducing a bunch of AI tools with the new iPhone. And so Samsung and Google are going to try to up them and have more useful features. Now, the big question everybody has is, what are these features and how are they going to help me? And do I even care? And I think that's questionable. There are some AI tools on the Galaxy that I was playing around with, and most of them are photo related. But that's the gist of what's happening right now.
How is AI applicable to most people who have the new version of any number of these phones, Samsungs, or Apple phones?
Not Apple yet. It's coming in September. On the Samsung and Google phones, you can do a circle search. So if I have a picture of the Grand Tetons and a house in front of it, I can do a circle on the house and it will tell me the name of that house, the address, things like that, without having to type in, what is this? You could also do photo things where you could take that house out of the picture. Just by doing a little playing with your finger. So that's something you can do. There you go. There's circle search right there.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I have to say that is AI technology that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and then transcribing phone calls is something that they're doing and that Apple will be doing. And
so that means it's listening to my call, which I opt into. I get it, and then it will. And after the fact, I'll transcribe it. It'll give me a whole transcription of my conversation.
Hopefully, we're actually interviewing Mark about his weather days, and at the end of the interview, we'll have it transcribed, as opposed to, "Hey, Mark, how's it going? What's new?"
I see.
Right?
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
You also mentioned, and this is, I guess everything's just AI all over the place. You had mentioned to me that AI generated voices are being used. I think Al Michaels' voice is going to be at the Olympics this year.
So Al Michaels is going to be delivering Olympic updates, but it's not Al Michaels. It's an AI version of Al Michaels. I assume that he will still be on the air and he'll be doing his things, but NBC is going to be sending out these little updates and they're going to use AI to generate his voice. They went to him and he said, fine. And it says in that article that he's being paid for for lending his voice. It doesn't say how much. Now, if I come to you, Mark, and I say, hey, I love what you do here on YouTube, and I'd like to just post the show with your AI version of Mark. And you say, oh, then I don't have to do the work? Okay, fine. How much am I getting? Am I going to give you $10, $50, $100, $1,000, $2,000? What's it going to be to make it worth your while to give your blessing to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if I'm Al Michaels, there is a number that's much higher than if I'm Mark Thompson. But I get your point that there is value to all of our likenesses, and maybe the greatest value in this instance to Al Michaels. It's an iconic voice. He had an iconic call. The Miracle on Ice, and associated with the Olympics. So he's a major force. It's really interesting. Also, curiosity. Like, I'd be curious to hear what that sounds like.
I could assume that it's going to be grunge work. It's going to be so and so won, so and so is competing, blah blah blah. Nothing with any narrative, anything that any style that needs to go. It's just basic reporting the stats. So maybe that's one reason that he thinks it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Tell me about the AirPod evolution and what's happening with that.
According to a top analyst, there's going to be, I have one around here somewhere. Well, I don't. There's going to be cameras in the AirPods. And to which you say, oh, okay, there's going to be a camera in the AirPod that's going to be photographing the inside of my ear. Or going to be photographing the outside of my ear. And you say, well, that's really boring. Do I care? It's part of the Vision Pro, which is that headset that we talked about a few months ago that's turned out to be a bomb. The $3,500 virtual reality headset that most people are not buying.
You predicted that they would be a bomb, and it has been a bomb.
Yeah. So they've stopped working on the new version, and they're working on a second, lighter, less expensive version. And these AirPods would film stuff that you could then see within the Vision Pro. I don't see a long life for it. I love my AirPods, though.
I don't understand why the camera shoots to the side. Is that what it does? I mean, it must shoot to the side, shoot out. So you turn your head if you want to see. It seems like another thing.
That way.
It's associated with orientation, with geographic orientation, meaning it fits into that Vision Pod thing that you're talking about.
I love my video glasses, which go that way, photograph that way.
Those are the Ray-Bans?
Yeah. I should have done live with you with those glasses, and the lady couldn't have yelled at me.
That really would have been, that's the way. That would have been the way. Last thing I wanted to ask you about, I don't know if you know anything about this, it's kind of wild, but there are a lot of tech companies that are involved in this sort of work revolution that's going on where they're asking the workers to come back to the office. And the workers are saying, you know, they've been home for a long time, started with COVID. The remote work crew is not coming back in. They're very reluctant to actually return to the workplace. And the threat, the latest is at Dell Computer. The threat is if you don't come back into the office, guys, then all of you who don't come back into the office are not eligible for promotions. That memo went out, and still nobody came into the office. And that standoff has continued. And another memo went out and said, hey, we're serious. This is it. Those people who don't come into the office within 24 hours will not be able to get promotions at Dell Computer. And still nobody came into the office. So the more I was reading, the more I saw, oh, this is interesting because it's across the tech world. And so the Dell workers, look, there it is. Dell said return to the office or else. Nearly half of workers chose or else. People are reluctant to come back to work. And it's particularly the case within the world of tech. And the last thing I'll say, and then I want to hear your answer, is that most of these tech companies are doing just fine. In other words, people are actually working remotely. They're just not working at the office. So I'm wondering how this all games out.
Well, first of all, I don't think that it's that they don't want to return to the office. I think they don't want to get in their car and they don't want to commute and they don't want to drive an hour there and an hour back. And they don't want to, you know, if they have to pick up their kid, they want to be able to pick up their kid. That's really what it's all about. Once you took that off the equation, who would ever want to commute again? You know, that's really what it's about. And, you know, I don't know exactly what these jobs are. Assume that it's direct sales and there's a lot of telephone calls. I know that when I worked in an office, my boss was on the phone all day or doing stuff and I couldn't even get her attention. And the only way I could get her attention was by sending her a Slack message. So I could do that from home just as easily. And did I need to be promoted? I think a lot of people just don't care. I think the quality of life, as you know, because you work at home and I work at home, it's a pretty great thing.
I actually love the remote work, but I also love people. So I enjoy the social aspects of, you know, seeing people at the office. That said, I think you make a good point. I mean, the excruciating commute in the Bay Area or in Los Angeles or in any major city, and even some of the smaller cities around the country are beginning to be clotted with, you know, commuters. It's a very tough existence. I mean, it adds an excruciating element to, you know, mornings and evenings. So if you're,
it's a lot of time. It's a lot of time to give up every day. To give up 2 hours of your day to be driving is just insane.
Give up some time and check out Jefferson Graham, jeffersongraham.substack.com. Photo Walks TV, the YouTube series, has a new big thing with tips for your, look at this, for your fireworks. This is how you can shoot fireworks displays. And for new viewers and listeners, Jefferson Graham has great tips. And he'll boil it all down. He has these are 3 tips, right?
No, it's one. It's one tip. On how to get great fireworks shots on Thursday. Wow.
One tip. He boiled the 3 tips down to 1 tip. I love it. Jeff, have a great holiday. Thank you for being available always to us and being such a great ally to the show. And we encourage everybody to check you out. Jefferson Graham, everybody. Thanks, Jeff. Bye-bye. Love it, love it, love it, love it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Great, I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
What up, everybody? I'm glad we are swinging into the second hour. We've got time to check out some news from Kim. Then we'll get on to David Katz, the brilliant, world-renowned legal analyst, the one you have yet to hear from on the Supreme Court. And on the grim realities ahead, I get a lot of, what can we do? I get that from people all the time. So we can talk about that with David. Should be no fireworks any place, says Teacher Lori. I like Teacher Lori because she knows what she likes. She knows what she doesn't like. And she doesn't like fireworks. Should be no fireworks whatsoever in a heat wave and a high fire danger. None. And you know what? Do I agree with Teacher Lori or not, Kim?
You do. You completely agree with her. Yeah.
I agree with her.
Yeah. Because we're the show of common sense. That's why.
Yes, it is true that you are right, Lori. There should be no fireworks. It's insanity, especially now with the technology so well developed to have these amazing light shows. You can do it without fireworks. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that I have to say the illegal fireworks world is so, it's exploded, if you'll pardon the expression, to the point that there are more of these illegal fireworks shows. You've seen the videos. If you look across the videos, these are time lapses across Los Angeles, the time lapses across San Francisco. It's insane. Across all of San Francisco Bay, there's all this stuff. Those are all illegal fireworks for the most part. Same thing is true in Los Angeles. So, it's not to mention the threat it poses to pets. So it's a real, meaning so many dogs are lost after these fireworks displays. It's just so sad. So, all right, I have to move on, don't I?
Yeah, David Katz is standing by. I just really have 3 stories that I think are really important to talk about. So I'll be very quick.
Okay, Kim's news real quick, and then we'll get basically, these are headlines, and then we'll get immediately to David Katz. Smash the like button like a boss, if you would. Yeah, it's a thumbs up. Helps us in the world of YouTube. Kim's headlines, and then David Katz.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Prosecutors in former President Trump's hush money case say they don't oppose a delay in his sentencing. Trump's lawyers asked the judge in the case for this delay after Monday's Supreme Court immunity ruling. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg says he is open to this request if Trump's legal team files it by July 24th. That's about 2 weeks after the original deadline. So, okay.
Yeah.
There's some homes at risk of losing power today as a heat wave blankets the Bay Area. PG&E customers in Napa and Solano counties and others were alerted yesterday to prepare for planned outages. The utility saying it's one way to prevent its equipment from sparking wildfires in the area. There's an excessive heat warning starting this morning for those living inland, where temperatures could soar to 110 degrees. Spots closer to the Bay Area bracing for temps in the 90s. So a couple of big fires yesterday. Well, not big fires, but both likely sparked by fireworks. Speaking of fireworks, in San Francisco, it was a 3-acre grass fire in McLaren Park. Started late Sunday night after an illegal firework was set off nearby. And in Berkeley, this is a scary one. Remember that fire in the Berkeley Hills? Well, now crews found some fireworks in a box on the side of the road when they arrived last night to fight a brush fire in the Berkeley Hills. They say a tip came in about illegal fireworks going off in the area. They didn't find anyone and managed to contain that fire to 2 acres. There is a crucial decision coming today for the leader of Oakland. City Council will be voting on whether or not to include a recall of Mayor Sheng Tao on the November ballot. Organizers behind the effort collected enough signatures last month to leave it up to the voters, and they are blaming her for high crime rates, business closures, and a massive budget deficit. The meeting comes just days after Mayor Tao declared her innocence in the FBI raid on her home. And if you're headed out for the 4th of July holiday, like a lot of people planning to travel, guess what? Gas prices are up slightly as you hit the road for the 4th of July holiday. So isn't that nice? About 4 cents higher than a week ago. This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. It is a place to get a little heaven in your cup. Whether you're getting the coffee like Mark or the iced tea, the tea like me, you can find a huge selection of coffees and amazing teas. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Make sure if you get your stuff in the little cart and you're going to check out that you enter the secret code MARK-T, no spaces in between. It will get you 10% off just for being a Mark Thompson Show listener. So why are you laughing at me now?
The little cart. Remember when you talk to us like we're third graders?
It is a little cart. It's a little teeny cart.
Remember
up
when
in the
you
corner.
get your stuff in your little cart?
It's not a
you
big
add
cart.
the little code.
I'm yellow carding you. You'll get a yellow card. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Oh, come on, everybody. We're excited to have you here. More excited that this guy is available today. I asked him, and I thank him so much in advance. He is renowned around the English-speaking world for his legal analysis. You can hear him in London. You can see him in London. You can hear him and see him in New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Los Angeles, on the networks, on Fox. He is so well regarded because he really calls balls and strikes. He's without partisanship. He offers you legal analysis. How about it for David Katz?
Great to be
the former
with you,
federal
Mark.
prosecutor. Yeah, used to be with the feds prosecuting people. Now you're a defense lawyer, and this is a titanic decision by the Supreme Court. I'm just talking about the one on Monday. We can go double back to, I think the Chevron deference case is immense as well. But this immunity case, David, it really defies, I was talking to David Cay Johnston in the first hour, and he was mentioning it as well, that this really defies even your legal analysis of predictions, which have been pretty spot on. You thought they'd knock this back down to the lower court. They wouldn't lean into this immunity issue quite the way they have. And there is really no one I can think of, and as I say, I include David Cay Johnston, who thought that they would lean into this immunity issue this way and really change American life and the course of the presidency in this fashion.
Well, I had a feeling, actually, Mark, that they would. Because you and I did a show on Nixon versus Fitzgerald, and I was kind of like the skunk at the picnic. I probably depressed a lot of our viewers, but Nixon v. Fitzgerald is a case that I emphasized, and I tried to, because there was so much rhetoric that this was all outrageous and the president was holding himself up as a king and there was no precedent for it. How could this be happening? And I did alert people to the fact that this Nixon v. Fitzgerald case, which is one that holds the president immune even after his office has been served, even after his or her time in office, a president after the president's term cannot be sued. And I mentioned then during a show that we did about it that it was, in my opinion, a case where they should have allowed Nixon after he was president, and he resigned in as much disgrace as any. He left the presidency in as much disgrace, and so there was sort of a feeling that this is a guy not worth protecting his presidency. And this Fitzgerald seemed to have a righteous case that he had been picked. It was by a bad presidential motive. It looked like the president wasn't really terminating him because he hadn't done a good job. All he'd done was taken a position about its cost overrun, and the Republicans and Nixon wanted this defense system to go through, and Fitzgerald had said, no, there are these big overruns, and he testified in Congress. He wasn't one of those people who ran around all the time, and tried to sort of blast the president. He was called to testify. He had testimony that hurt Nixon. Nixon got him fired. Nixon said bad things about him. He sued Nixon after Nixon was president, and they said Nixon had total civil immunity. So the question in this case was going to be whether the president had total criminal immunity. The case went 5-4 after Nixon's presidency. The 4 dissenters said, are you kidding me? We're going to go this far. Are we also going to go to criminal immunity? So there actually was some background, as horrible as it seemed, that there would be a decision in this regard. What I had said was that they were definitely going to send the case back to define part of the conduct as official and part of it as private. And so I don't think a lot of people really could have predicted that they would set up this system, kind of this 3-tiered system, the way that they set it up. But I do want to say this, that I was probably a lot more pessimistic than a lot of moderate to liberal guests that the U.S. Supreme Court would go this way. And I figured that they would get all 6 of them to go this way. And I also predicted that this would, as a practical matter, delay there ever being an election fraud, an election interference trial, the January 6th trial, that it would ever happen before the November election. And one last thing that I do want to say before, because I didn't have a chance to say this last week. And by the way, I'm so glad you look so recovered. You look great, Mark.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It was a
terrific.
rough ride, so thank you.
I said prayers for you, and
Thank you, pal.
I'm really happy to see you back and recovered. I know everybody watching your show is. But I said last week, and I do want to point this out again, that I actually predicted all the cases on your program that we did this year from the U.S. Supreme Court. I predicted the outcome. And the reason I was able to predict the outcome, I think, in large part, was I did try to do not what I wanted the decision to be, but what I thought the decision was going to be based on the oral arguments. Of course, after the oral argument, it's easier to predict than before the oral argument, although sometimes the mere fact that the U.S. Supreme Court takes a case, since generally speaking, they have discretion not to take any case they don't want to take. Once you saw that they'd taken the D.C. Circuit case, right there you knew that they were not going to just stand by what the D.C. Circuit had held. By the way, in this case, 3-0, including a Republican-appointed judge, unanimously, the D.C. Circuit had said, you can prosecute the president like you could prosecute anyone else after the president has been president. You have to do it on a case-by-case basis, evidence-by-evidence basis, as the evidence is actually presented at the trial. Once the Supreme Court took it, I thought it was pretty clear that they were going to do something different with it. But that was how, I predicted, Chevron was going to come out the way that I don't personally, philosophically agree with. That was why I thought the January 6th obstruction case, that it was going to be held to be too vague a statute. And all the other cases that I predicted accurately this term that we've discussed. So I do want to say that in Katsadamas' defense.
Yes, no, Katsadamas has been very good, and I guess what I was trying to get at was simply that this was an overreach, it seemed to me, in a way. And I remembered you talking about the Nixon case. I thought you laid it out so well, and you also sort of talk about the way that the chief executive does have to be protected from certain kinds of decisions that the chief executive has to make, but. It seemed like an aggressive overreach to both protect this president, particularly because this president's case was actually noted, but also this new power that's conferred to the office is frightening, isn't it?
Oh, it's absolutely frightening, and it has changed the understanding that all of us have had of what the separation of powers is. There's a famous book about the U.S. Supreme Court called The Least Dangerous Branch. And the author, this is a book written decades ago, but all of your law students who've been in federal courts and have planned to practice in the federal courts have read or heard about this book. And the idea is, of course, that the U.S. Supreme Court serves best when it's the least dangerous branch, that you worry about an imperial presidency. They used to worry about sort of an imperial Congress, kind of like in the United Kingdom, where if you've got both houses of parliament, you really rule the roost. There's no written constitution. There's no Supreme Court that seems to weigh in on the major issues of the day in the United Kingdom the way that they do here. So you can imagine an imperial legislature, an imperial presidency, but he imagined an imperial judiciary. And people are really worried that they have gone to that length, that they've made the president too strong, they've made themselves too strong, and they've made our rights too weak. I think what happened here is that there's two different views. There's
you got to do something.
Right.
Yeah.
There's two different views of what to worry about. And what the Republicans, the 6 of them, worry about is this, constant prosecution of the president or former president. Now, the president would think, I'm going to get nibbled to death. That was kind of their thinking in the Nixon v. Fitzgerald case, that a former president would worry in office that the president would be nibbled to death after his or her term. But that, can you do 1 second?
Yeah, go do what you got to do. It's okay. We're right here. We're talking to David Katz, the former federal prosecutor, and we're talking about the presidential immunity ruling. I also want to get to Chevron deference, and we're basically right now, David's saying, hey, the concern was that you're going to be essentially paralyzed as president if your concern is always going to be, how am I going to be prosecuted after
Can I
leave
finish
office?
that thought?
Yeah,
Mark,
go
can
ahead. I was
finish
just
that
summarizing
thought?
your thing. Yeah,
Mark,
go
can I
ahead.
just finish that thought? Mark,
Yeah, please.
Can you-
Yes.
yeah. So they were really worried. They're concerned, and I don't fault anybody for this. I understand that there were political pressures. Let's say the DA, he won office. People in New York thought this is outrageous, that there should be some prosecution. But I think the fact that there were 4 prosecutions that were going on, 2 federal and 2 state, I think couldn't have helped but entered the 6 Republicans' minds that this is a real possibility, that not just this president, but other presidents will not only be nibbled to death, by civil suits, but the argument in Fitzgerald was that, well, that won't happen with prosecutions because there's so many checks on prosecutions. It's not just some guy like Fitzgerald filing a lawsuit, whether it's righteous or not. For his righteous lawsuit, there might be 20 others that weren't. And, the president has to defend after the president leaves office, all 21 of them. That's kind of the rationale of that. The fact that there were this proliferation of lawsuits, I think, was something that weighed much too heavily in the 6 justices' minds. Of course, the other side of it, the one that I subscribe to, the one that the 3 dissenters do, is that you really would have an authoritarian president. And there's all of these things. It's like the satires about, sending, the SEAL team to go kill your political rival. They didn't really deal with that. The majority does not deal with the fact that the president would say this was an official act, find some official purpose for it, only to talk to federal officials who were under the president's exercise and say, I was faithfully executing the law. That's the presidential power that I was exercising. I was faithfully executing the laws with other federal officials and could do awful things. And on that score, Justice Jackson, not this one, the Justice Jackson of such great fame decades ago in the Korematsu case, the case about the Japanese internment camps, he dissented and he said, look at this power that you're giving the president. The president basically can go. So what if we're at war? The president can go and intern tens of thousands of Japanese citizens. And the president can do that on their say-so because the president's executing the laws. This is a loaded gun, which a future president will shoot in awful ways. And that's, of course, the criticism of this case that I subscribe to, but I saw it coming because they had the 6 votes. What's interesting is that there's an aspect of the case which has an impact now in the New York case, the one that Trump was going to be sentenced on in a couple of days before the Republican National Convention, which he's now not going to be sentenced on for weeks and weeks because he's going to raise this issue. And this one sounds a little bit inside baseball, but this is really frightening. They didn't even get Amy Coney Barrett's vote on this one. This one split 5-4. And I'm, as though I'm usually a defender of the Chief Justice, I cannot believe what people may remember about the Chief Justice is that he joined this monstrosity, this dangerous case. And he could have not at least joined this part. It would have been 5-4 the other way. During the oral argument, Mark and Kim, he said that, there's certainly you can bring in evidence and you can talk about the official. I mean, how do you, he said, if a president takes $1 million to appoint an ambassador and you can show it's a bribe, how do you charge him with bribery, which is not an official act, being bribed, without mentioning that it was in exchange for this ambassadorship? Now he joined the decision which says, well, wait a second, you can't even refer to the official acts. There can be no evidence about a former president's official acts. So how would you even plead, but much less how would you show beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury that the president committed a non-official act of taking a bribe if you can't mention what it was in exchange for? It wouldn't make any sense. He received $10,000 out of, or $1 million out of thin air. The jury would think, well, wait a second, where's the quid pro quo? They showed a quid, they didn't show a quo, not guilty. You see, I was totally acquitted of everything, a Trump would say, a future Trump would say, totally acquitted, no basis for any of this stuff. He asked the question that showed that he got it during the oral argument, and then he switched. Even Amy Coney Barrett wouldn't have gone that far. And so because of this principle that you cannot present even any evidence of an official act, now they're saying in New York, wait a second, there was some evidence of some official acts in that New York Stormy Daniels case. There were things that the president did as he was president. Now, they're going to argue all he did as president was write checks for the 12 different payments to Michael Cohen, which were a scam, which was a fraud, which was a falsification of records. He did that for the purpose of election interference. And they're going to say that that conviction ought to stand. I think that conviction in New York City will stand, but it's delayed it because Trump's attorneys ran immediately to court, which was good lawyering, given the fact that they now have this incredibly favorable decision that no evidence is supposed to be presented about official acts. They have that they can present to the judge. I think all it will do is delay the sentencing for a month or two. But that's going to be awfully fraught. And I've always said that I don't think that Trump is going to be sent to jail or even put on house arrest by this judge in New York City. And now, with what looks like this decision, Trump's increasing chance of winning, God forbid, after the debacle of a debate performance by Biden, which hopefully he can do better in other things. I just don't see this New York City judge sending Trump to jail for even one day.
Yeah, well, it looks as though that sentencing has been, already put off, sort of in deference to, or in certainly an acknowledgement of the latest Supreme Court ruling. Do you have something, Kim?
I have two questions, and I think they really were both covered, but I wanted to throw this up there because there was a headline on the Huffington Post last night that said the Supreme Court has given Joe Biden legal okay to assassinate Donald Trump. And I've seen the most kind of absurd, theories about what President Biden could do floated around. And I wonder if this is really true. I mean, is that what they did? Did they give him carte blanche to do something like this?
Well, you have to believe that the members of the military, having taken an oath to defend and protect the Constitution, would not carry out that order. But my God, that's the U.S. Supreme Court's decision that we can't rely upon their rulings, but we have to rely on the fact that no military officer would actually carry out such an order. And of course, they could go to jail for it, right? And so the idea is that some subsequent president, some subsequent attorney general could prosecute them for having carried out that order because it's so plainly unlawful. And it is plainly unlawful to do those sorts of things. I mean, even if you do have your attorney general there. But one of the very frightening things about the decision was they did say that anything having to do with the Department of Justice was off limits. So this incident with Jeffrey Clark, where they wanted to vault him over the acting attorney general and the deputy attorney general and make him the attorney general so that he could issue this false warning about alleged election irregularities in states like Georgia and other states that had already been clearly counted and decided and recounted and that were in Biden's column and had voted for Biden, to suggest that there was election fraud in those cases and the Department of Justice was investigating it. And there seemed to be no other purpose but to vault that Jeffrey Clark over them. The president cannot be indicted for that. That has to be stricken from the indictment when it gets presented, because the fact that he spoke to another Department of Justice official, as a matter of law, it seems like he has an absolute immunity that he was working with other federal officials and he was taking care of the law. Well, it's pretty obvious how you would then become a dictator. You would do things only through federal officials and say that you were carrying out the law. And if he never made the phone call, it's interesting. I think they can continue to prosecute him. And, if he loses the election, I think because he'll dismiss the charges. If Trump gets back into power, he'll dismiss all these federal charges within a day or two. If he doesn't do it within the first 5 minutes. But if he does not get back into power and the prosecutions go forward, I think that he can be successfully prosecuted, found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, because he picked up the phone and he called that Georgia official. He did it himself. There was another Department of Justice official there, but he was talking to a state official. The Chief Justice Roberts, in his decision for the 6th, he did give some avenue to continue to prosecute, because he said there are things that the president does running for office or as a party leader that he can be prosecuted for. And so a lot of this conduct is going to be argued to be that this was running for office. This was as a political candidate trying to get reelected, and was not the office of the president's, core responsibilities. But remember, the three-part test is for something totally private. He goes outside the White House. He finds out that somebody else is fooling around with Melania, and he punches him in the nose. That's not official, and a president can be prosecuted for that, okay? There's this core one, which is going to cover an awful lot of stuff, and that's absolute immunity, and that's what they said as to dealings with the Department of Justice officials, even though he had a bad motive. They said you cannot bring in the bad motive or evidence about motive of a former president because it gets too close to this zone. It will freeze, that will have all these weak presidents. And you know what's amazing? Every president, until this decision was issued on Monday, every single president knew if they committed a violation of criminal law, they could be prosecuted federally after they were president. Every single one of them. Have we had weak presidents? We've had FDR. We had Trump in his first term. We had Obama. We had all of these presidents who were definitely, Lyndon Johnson, they weren't weak at all. They weren't frozen in the performance of their duties. This is all made up out of, I won't say out of whole cloth, because they're good enough lawyers that they found little strands from earlier decisions, right? Like Nixon v. Fitzgerald, even Marbury v. Madison, the famous old case from the early 1800s. The Nixon tapes case. Let me mention the Nixon tapes case. While they took things from all of those cases, they basically overruled the Nixon tapes case. If that had been the law, Nixon wouldn't have turned over the tapes. Nixon wouldn't have resigned his office.
Nixon wouldn't have needed to turn over the tapes.
I'm older than you, but what we've known our whole lives, that even a president has to comply with a subpoena, that even Nixon had to resign, that his own Republican senators went to him and said, it's over. You broke the law. Get out before we impeach you. Okay. Nixon, they basically overruled a sub rosa, not by saying so, but the intent of it, by reading it, you realize that this case basically would have had Nixon come out the other way and he wouldn't have resigned. So that's all my thoughts. I kind of gushed them out. So please ask your questions.
No, that's great.
Sorry.
I mean, I led the show yesterday talking about the deal that essentially informed the closing days of the Trump administration, in which he had gotten rid of Barr, had put in a henchman there in the Attorney General post at Justice, and then he said, "Look, I need you to, discuss the fact, or even if it's not, I don't worry about getting the evidence now. Just talk about the fact that you're investigating fraud in the last election." It was such an obvious. And that was really where he was facing a kind of Justice Department revolt over that. Now that would completely be covered by the kind of immunity that came down. Can you?
He said to Clark and the others, just say you're investigating and let me and the Republican congressman take it from there. Yeah. But you see, you couldn't even bring that in to show his bad motive. In other words, once the president says it's really, really scary. And of course, if you need another reason to vote for the Democratic candidate, whether it's Biden or someone else, and not Trump, it's still a two-way race. There's only two possibilities. Trump gets it or the Democratic nominee gets it. And everything else, RFK Jr. staying home, you're voting for Trump. RFK Jr., you're staying home, you're voting for Trump. Yeah. And the powers that he would have after this decision, and the way he's already said that he would use them in a second term, people really need to think long and hard that it's not rhetoric about saving our democracy. Our democracy really is on the chopping block in this election.
Did you have something, Kim? I'm sorry.
I do. And you kind of touched on this earlier, but I just kind of want to clarify in this New York hush money case, where there's now a delay in the sentencing phase of this trial. Is it? It seems to me that the whole hush money thing happened before Trump ever became president, but you talked about how he wrote the checks while he was in office. Does the entire case hinge on the check writing? Pardon me, is that why it's in jeopardy now?
Well, he wrote tweets, I think, while he was in the Oval Office. And he made other kinds of communications. And they're going to say that should not have come in under the U.S. Supreme Court ruling. Because remember, the U.S. Supreme Court, having ruled, their rulings apply to every case in the country, state as well as federal. It applies to the Georgia case and it applies to the New York case. And so they said, look, now that we have this clarification, this actually radical decision by the U.S. Supreme Court, none of the evidence about what he did while he was president should have come into trial at all. This case had to be proved only with evidence that did not include any official acts. And so Trump is going to try to characterize some of what came into evidence as being official acts or being in this presumptive zone, this middle zone. He's going to say that the presumption was not overcome, therefore that evidence, but by the prosecution in New York City, therefore that evidence should not have come in. The evidence that should not have come in was harmful. It was not harmless error. Had the case been presented to a jury without the evidence that should not have come in against Trump, there might have been a different verdict. And if the judge says, yes, I think there's really a reasonable possibility or probability, I'm not sure what the standard is there in New York City, of there having been a different verdict, the way we cure that is with a new trial. And of course, a new trial in New York City would be a fiasco, especially if he's president at the time. I mean, one thing to bear in mind is that the power of a president, and greatly enhanced by this decision, but the power of the president is just overwhelming. I mean, it's one thing for Trump to say right now that he thinks that Liz Cheney should be brought before a military tribunal on treason charges. I mean, it's just, it's a madman, talking. That madman becomes president, okay? You really wonder what's going on. He's the commander in chief. He's in charge of the military tribunals. They've never been, great in terms of, evidentiary, punctiliousness. At least that's how people see them. They don't see them as fair as trials. They're certainly not a jury trial, not a normal jury. So the power, and that's the other thing with these folks down in Atlanta. You say, well, he doesn't have the power to pardon himself or do anything about the Atlanta case because it's in state court. But my goodness, the power of a president doing all of these things under this new decision. I mean, it's very intimidating. It doesn't matter how smart you are. I was a federal prosecutor. We were brave, we were smart, we were fearless. My God, to have the president of the United States, Trump, back in office and want to get you, boy, I would not want to be. I don't think anyone who would want to be those prosecutors or police officers or anybody working on the case down in Atlanta or New York City against them, even though he technically doesn't have the power to pardon himself.
Look what he did to Vindman after his testimony in the in the House before the House committee. It was unbelievable. I mean, he essentially locked Vindman out of his entitled pension from the government. This guy served in the armed forces. I wanted you to play.
He did that to those FBI officials. Remember, he did that to those top FBI officials. He went through the FBI, America's, so prestigious law enforcement agency. You look at that. I think he cleaned Comey, the fellow under him, who's now a commentator, all these people. He cleaned them out of the FBI. I mean, they're also fearless, But wow, you start looking around it and you think, wow, I'm a subordinate, and look up above me, and 7 of the 8 people have been removed by this president. One way or the other, 7 of the 8 people running the FBI don't seem to be here anymore, and they seem to have all pissed off Trump, and they're not here anymore.
Right, and these people have families, and these are real people too. This isn't they're not one-dimensional.
That guy won his pension back. The number 2 under Comey, he won his pension back.
And I believe Vindman might have gotten his after that, or I know he was trying to.
But of course, Trump says, Mark, that that's the deep state. He wants to get rid of all those deep state people who
he will get rid of
adjudications, who've given their lives to serving in the federal government, not because of partisanship, but because of a sense of duty. I mean, I know people may think it's maudlin. It's not maudlin. I've worked in the federal government, and people are there, generally speaking, because of their sense of duty. They want to do the right thing and not to railroad somebody from the Republicans or from the Democrats. And of course, Trump treats it like everybody who takes a fair look at anything that he wants to do and doesn't agree with what Trump wants to do is an enemy of the people and should be separated from federal service at the least.
Imagine making part, I'm just glad you mentioned this. I've been meaning to mention, I wanted to mention it yesterday. I'll just mention it now. It's sort of adjacent to what you're talking about. Imagine mentioning as part of your campaign stump speeches and making it a centerpiece of interviews that you want retribution. I mean, to me, it's utterly absurd. I mean, you're supposed to, in Sponge Trump, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do for you, the American people. I'm going to make your life better. I'm going to lower taxes, lower costs at the grocery store, whatever the price, I'm going to do all of these things that these generally empty promises oftentimes are made. The notion that you would get up on a stump and you would say, "Let me tell you something. I'm going to take revenge for you. My revenge is your revenge." I mean, it's absurd. It's the sort of rising despotism that I find incredibly scary. I know we've kept you over time. I really appreciate you being here.
Can I mention one more thing too?
Yeah.
Because you've talked about the Mar-a-Lago case, and it's just such a pity. The Mar-a-Lago case could have started. And, as I say, if you read Nixon v. Fitzgerald, which you might not like the case, but it was decided. There it was. It was probably the closest precedent. If Jack Smith had read that case and pleaded the Mar-a-Lago indictment without anything, forget taking the documents, okay? It just starts with the day after Trump is president. Starts with the day after he's president, January 21st. And is filed in Washington, D.C. It would have had no presidential immunity. Now, again, he would have had to be a little bit clairvoyant to have tried the case, okay? But he's got a lot of smart lawyers say, you know what? Let's stay away from anything that had to do with, I think he would have been allowed to prove in the case that Trump acquired the documents. Maybe even how he acquired them wouldn't be relevant. We raided this place in Mar-a-Lago, and we found all these documents that had been taken from Washington, D.C. After subpoenaing them back, doing everything we could to get them back, he didn't turn them back. His own lawyer was subject to the attorney-client, not the attorney-client privilege, but the crime fraud exception to the attorney-client privilege. He gave us this testimony. None of this relates to when he was president. None of these are acts about president. Here's a fellow who's no longer president, who has all these top national security documents. He files that thing in Washington, D.C., and I think that could have changed the course of history.
I totally agree. It's game over if it's filed in Washington, D.C. You know how I feel about that. We agree. And it literally could have been, as you've just said, the only case that Jack Smith filed, and everything else could have just been in the on-deck circle, and it would have been a totally different world.
A willful U.S. Supreme Court was always bound and determined to find some way to shield Trump. If you have that view that there are two radical right-wingers on there, Alito and Thomas, and there are three people who were appointed by Trump, and their appreciation for being on the U.S. Supreme Court to be this enormous part of history is so huge itself that those five would have done Trump's bidding no matter what. They would have found a way. Of course, Trump would have appealed whatever was about to happen in the Mar-a-lago case.
But
so I guess in that sense,
the reality,
they would have found some way. They would have found some way to always have ruled for Trump, to have always carried water for Trump, just like they did on his tax returns for over 2 years. They would have carried this water for Trump. So don't even blame Jack Smith on that.
But the stink of taking the documents and the stink that would have come out as the case was discussed, that was a big stink, and it's inexplicable why you take thousands of classified military documents to your home. That, I think, that stink he couldn't have gotten away from. He could have legally gotten away from it, but I think it would have damaged him. Play for him quickly on the way out, Tony, that thing we've been sitting on. We just gotten into a conversation. These are all of the Supreme Court justices telling you how everyone answers to the law in this country. No man or woman is above the law.
No one's above the law in the United States. That's a foundational principle that I've talked about, coming from Federalist 69, coming from the structure of the Constitution.
I don't think the president is above the law. No person in this country, no matter how high or powerful, is above the law.
I believe that no one is above the law under our system, and that includes the president. The president is fully bound by the law.
No man is above the law.
Does he have that power?
No man is above the law, Senator.
I agree. No one is above the law.
No one.
So there are all your conservative justices. Yeah, except, oh, wait a minute. We'll take a meeting on that, I guess, because apparently the president of the United States is above the law. David, thank you. Have a great holiday, and I appreciate you stopping through on this remarkable week. America really changed, and it sounds like, media recharacterizing something in some sort of clickbaity way, but it's not that. It really is that bad. David Katz, the former federal prosecutor. Yeah.
Happy 4th to everyone, and I'll say it on every show of yours if I remember to. Go out and vote. Go out and vote on November 5th. Go out and vote. The country's fate depends on it.
Exactly right. David Katz, everybody. Thanks, David.
Hey, which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
Use Mark Thompson.
The Mark Thompson Thompson Show.
He's the real thing, that David Katz. Love him. I want to introduce you to somebody new, somebody you don't know on this show, but she is well known as an award-winning investigative journalist. I used to work with her. Used to work closely with this Emmy award-winning investigative reporter and journalist. And she does now, I subscribe to her podcast and also to her Substack and essentially everything that comes out of the BetteDangerous.com world. Bette Dangerous is Bette. Yeah, there you see it, BetteDangerous.com. I'm smiling because I just love the name. She also produced Radicalized Truth Survives, that podcast, which is an investigative show about disinformation. And her name, Heidi Siegmund Cuda. What's up, Heidi?
Oh, man.
It's good to see you again.
It is wonderful to see you. It's great to hear your voice. And I've just been sitting here thinking about old times and good times, and happy to see you still at it and swinging hard. It's important.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I like about you is that you are aggressive and you really swing hard. You get some great conversations, great guests through your world. You have to, like all of us, now look at the 2024 election in a whole different light. Sadly, the Supreme Court cake is baked to some degree, but the stakes so immense. Maybe you can speak about that, the jetliner view of things. But then I want to ask you about what can be done from here. It seems as though the options are all grim.
The options feel very grim. Believe it or not, we've been in bad spots before in this country. And what we really have is a choice between continuing democratic governance and making deep structural reforms, starting with impeaching members of the Supreme Court that have been exposed for taking what in any other world would look a lot like a bribe. And we also know our Supreme Court has been captured. And if we end up talking anything about Project 2025, what we've seen this week is the beginning of that. And in my feeling, we continue to vote democratically. Democrats need to, in the best of times, there's a lot of infighting within Democrats. We don't have that luxury. As Will Rogers said, I'm not a member of any organized political party. I'm a Democrat. We don't have that luxury. We have to be much more strategic. And in my feeling, it's not about two men. It's literally the continuation of democratic governance or potentially 1,000 years of darkness as we descend into autocracy. Trump is telling us what he's going to do. Anybody who watched that debate, Mark, saw Stalin-level lies backed up by that strongman, Mussolini performance. And, of course, we had Joe Biden, who's old, and we need to get over that. But he was standing there like much of America, mouth agape at all of those lies. So,
I wish that he could have. I do wish that he could have done something besides just stand there with mouth agape. I mean, it seemed as though some of those lies could have been called out quite easily. But as you look at the options when it comes to Joe Biden, where are you? Your close ranks around him, or do you feel as you think that there just aren't really any options that are cleaner?
No, I think that if we actually scurried around and made a big change now, that would absolutely doom our democracy. I really do. And how I feel is that Biden brought policy papers to a knife fight, and he can't do that anymore. We are in what I call information world war. That was part of information warfare. That wasn't politics as usual. You literally had convicted felon, Stalin-level lies on one side, whose chief strategist just went to prison, whose personal lawyer just got disbarred. And so that's what you have on one hand. On the other side, you have a public servant who brought policy papers to a knife fight. And again, that is something that he can no longer do. And honestly, Mark, to answer your question, 90 minutes. Yeah, it was a perfect storm of awful, as my friend David Pepper just said. However, 3 years he spent doing the labor of democracy before Biden came to power. our allies started to begin, we were, thinking that we were part of the new axis of evil. He has assured our allies that's not who we are. And I think it's very important that we look at what he has done. And the next day we saw a different guy. So, but was it easy? No, it was a total gut punch. We all felt it.
I like that you mention it, though, in the terms that you just did, because I think you're exactly right. I think that Biden's head was filled with statistics and a number of things associated with policy. But you're right. That's not the politics of today, especially against Donald Trump. No. It's trying to pick off. I mean, it's a fire hose of lies. I don't think you can pick them all off, but you could certainly pick off a couple of the big ones and then getting out a couple of your accomplishments. But if you only want to go negative, you can do that too. But I think that if they had just reduced that which they filled Joe Biden's head with on that night, he might have had a better chance. Or, Heidi, honestly, maybe he's more like that than we think, although the next day he seemed fairly okay on the stump.
Right. And again, I don't think we're voting for two men. Look at the difference in the administrations. As I just mentioned, a whole litany of convicted felons, a campaign manager who went to prison, two personal lawyers, one went to prison, another's disbarred. It's like, it's pretty obvious what the distinction is. And then you have the very boring labor of democracy. That's not interesting to some people. Some people like those authoritarians. They like that dominance and that fear. But that is not what America is about. I do not want to see, 1930s Germany duplicated. And we are, if anybody wonders, I've said this many times, what you're doing in the rise of, the Nazi party in Germany, you're doing it now. And we still have a chance to peacefully continue democratic governance. Or, as I said, we are marching toward authoritarianism. They're telling us what they're going to do. The Supreme Court, as far as I'm concerned, is literally trying to kill us. They're enabling,
corporate polluters,
corporate polluters, taking away women's health care rights, which has very real repercussions, and putting machine guns back in the hands of a radicalized populace. Like, these are all things that are very dangerous. We know why they're doing it, and it's partially, why I write at my series at Bette Dangerous on American monsters and the 2016 election attack. It's literally because I want people to know the billionaires behind what we're seeing. And one more thing, we're continually focusing on culture wars and fighting amongst each other, not paying attention to the big power grabs. And that weakens us. And I would like Americans, no matter what side of the political fence they're on, who watch your show, to think about uniting in whatever way that looks for you, because us fighting each other is weakening us and allowing foreign enemies to move in on our turf and take advantage of Americans, basically, making it easy for them to do authoritarian capture in America.
Right, it's to infiltrate, essentially. I like that you mentioned the American Monster Series, because I was going to get to it anyway. Spend another 30 seconds or so, or give us a heartbeat or two on that, because I know you put a lot of work into that, and it's really good work.
It's so funny because it's like I write these things for myself so I still have clarity. So far, I'm up to 14, and it includes people like Mike Flynn, Steve Bannon, Rudy Giuliani, Donald Trump himself, Roy Cohn. You'll see our dear friend Rupert Murdoch in the middle, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk. These guys actually, Alex Jones, professional propagandist, goes on Russian television. I'm sure you probably knew Tucker Carlson back when and wonder what the heck is going on there.
I think I might have met him once. Yeah.
But people who used to know him used to say, hey, this was a really smart guy. What happened? Well, what happened is these guys here bet on authoritarianism, and they're calling it a whole bunch of other things. But literally, these people here know that global warming's real. They're doing everything to obfuscate. They are tied to networks that are trying to grab Earth's resources. They don't care what happens to us. And basically, I used court documents. I did the old, journalistic gumshoeing where I'm paying attention to indictments and convictions. These guys here all are aligned with autocrats throughout the world. And the scary thing for me, and the thing I want people to be aware of, because we still have a choice in November, is that literally A decade ago, half the world was ruled democratically. Now that has changed to 78% being ruled by autocracies. So we're trending in the wrong direction, and it's because of people like that. And one thing I will say, Roy Cohn right there, who's deceased, he was a mob lawyer who represented all 5 main mafia bosses in New York. He was also Trump's lawyer and mentor. He was also Roger Stone's lawyer and mentor. So we are looking at he also brought Rupert Murdoch into the White House. We're looking at a very long game, and we are at a very dangerous, conclusion to this game. But it's what we do. We still have a choice to say, I don't want that. I want the continuation of boring old democracy.
What do you think happens if Trump wins?
1,000 years of darkness. I mean, it's not going to be like a term, an administration. It's look at what's happening in Orban's Hungary. Look at what Putin did in Russia. We will see a never-ending array of, it'll be Trump, it'll be Kushner, it'll be Ivanka, it'll be a very similar looking autocracy that you saw in Hungary. And one example for those of your friends who like media, if you're in Hungary and you're under Orban made media donate all of their properties to the government. So there is no free speech left in Hungary. So, I think that's probably what we compare it to.
It's a soft autocracy, exactly. I love that you point to Hungary. It's a soft autocracy. This is a great comment. Oh, where did it go? Thomas says, I did glance at it. I hope I read it all the way through. America has abandoned well-regulated television and radio and foolishly allowed owners of news to transmit deceitful fictions instead of fact news. This is really something that is so good for you because you've worked in media, you've worked in television media, you've worked for these huge conglomerates, and you've also worked now in independent media. There is some truth to the fact that we've really let that genie out of the bottle. The sense of a public responsibility that media used to have, that's completely lost in America now.
Right. Thank you so much for that comment, Thomas, and for reading it, Mark. The bottom line is billionaire-controlled media and hedge fund-operated media is not going to save democracy. It's going to be the independents who can speak truth to power. That's what we have left. And unfortunately, big business is big media. They bet on fascism. And what's terrible about that is literally fascism is good for no one. If they want your business, they'll come take it. So that's the classic fascist blunder, to think you can control the leader. And that's not how it works. It's not good for anyone, including big business.
The French politics right now seem to be leaning hard. Here it is. Phineas says, isn't France leaning right? Yeah, sadly, France is. It's weird to see the continent and NATO allies going that way, and it's a reality.
We are in a global fight, Mark. It is a global fight. I did a piece couple years ago about Putin's covert war on the West, and literally when people say all roads lead to Putin, it is true. Russia was very effective propaganda, but it's actually a fact. All you have to do is look at the 2018 Republican-led Senate intelligence report to see that they are at war with the West. And you continually have them meddling in countries like France and Italy and wherever they can get a foothold, right now in Georgia, the country of Georgia. So this is a global fight. But I say it's what we do. We've been in bad places before. We've come out of it, but we can't obey in advance, number one, and we can't panic.
I can't wait to talk to you again on this show because I love your first visit. And now that you've got the dance down on joining us, we're going to make you dance again. It's Heidi, I just adore you. Used to work so closely with Heidi, and it was so much fun. And I just think there is some delight in watching all of the ways that you expose these awful people in your American Monsters series, your BetteDangerous.com work. Get her podcast, subscribe, support her. This is the investigative reporter, 2-time Emmy award-winning, really and a I guess I would just call you a journalist who's, been recognized throughout your entire career for all the great work you do. And I want my audience to recognize it as well now. So check it out. There you are with,
Oh, with my bros. Yeah.
With your crew. So find her and all of her work. Radicalize, the Truth Survives podcast is the investigative show about disinformation. As I say, though, BetteDangerous.com is the gateway to everything. You can find it all right there at Bette. And Bette is, for those who are listening and not watching, Bette. Bette is spelled Bette. BetteDangerous.com. Heidi, thank you. And I look forward to the next time.
I love you, man.
Love you back. See you. Heidi Cuda.
The Mark Thompson Show.
So cool to be back with a terrific mind like Heidi for a few minutes. She's remarkable, really remarkable. Mo Direct. Where's my Mo Direct been? It's been so long, Mo. In a galaxy far, far away. I don't know why I keep saying that today, but trusted intermediary to extend an olive branch. What is that related to? Do we need an olive branch between us and Mo Direct? Did you say something, Kim?
We did have I was yellow carded. Maybe he is trying to, mend fences over here.
Oh, you think it's on your
perhaps
your behalf?
I don't know.
Anyway, it's always about you, isn't it, Kim?
Don't make it all about me or anything.
I get it.
You asked what it was. I don't know.
Mo Direct, we love you.
Big shout
Don't
out.
worry, a big shout out, and thank you for the $2. James Pacheco.
Big shout out.
A $20 super sticker. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Love that 4th of July weekend started. By the way, we will be dark on the 4th of July, of course, to celebrate our independence and also the end of the democracy with which
as we know it.
Pamela Kirby, $5 super sticker. What up, Pamela? Big shout out. Yeah, thank you.
Big shout out.
The debate of the yellow cards. It was related to that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I owe Kim a...
Would you like to apologize for what you've done?
I wouldn't like to. I'd like her to apologize, but I'll say I stand corrected. I'm sorry.
I stand corrected.
No,
Wow.
See, I don't come
Takes
to
a really big person to say
I don't
that.
come to apologies as reluctantly as you do, Kim. Harry Magnan, a $5 super check. Can we get Heidi on a weekly basis? How about that? Big shout out. I'll ask her. I'd love for her to come through. Certainly, she'll be through again. Yeah. So if a president plans a murder before the election and finished the murder after the election, they cannot be charged as a murderer. Says Debbie. That would be true. Well, when you say a murder, first of all, big shout out. Thank you. When you say a murder, you'd have to declare someone, I think, an enemy. They would always they always have a cover,
personal
right?
murder, or
no, it's an enemy of the state. You declare them enemy of the state. They always
right.
plan. That's easy. You know what I mean? You call the Justice Department and say, "Hey, I want this guy dead." Find something on him. I don't even think you just say, "Well, it'd be nice if we could get rid of this guy." Whatever. I mean, But the answer is the conversation that the president had between himself and the Justice Department or those functionaries from the Justice Department, those are protected, and those would never be able to be used in a case against the president. So you'd never be able to prove, if you want to think of it this way, that there was ever an order given to have the person murdered. So, yes, you could get away with it. Wes Theory with a $5 super sticker.
Big
Thank
shout
you,
out.
Wes. You're always there for us. Appreciate that. It is a weird, it almost seems inconceivable, right? But that's really where we are now.
I saw someone in the chat say, "Oh, you guys are freaking out. Like none of this would ever happen." This type of thing. That these arguments are, ludicrous. But the what ifs. I mean, we never thought a bunch of things could happen. We never thought we'd have a president who is a felon. We never thought we'd have a president who mounted an insurrection against the United States and took a giant dump on democracy. So, pardon my language, but all of these things were wild to surmise. So the what ifs have to be part of the conversation now.
I think that there is a sense that you guys are exaggerating, but now you see that we're not. I mean, we're just not. I mean, I think you had a lawless president under Donald Trump who is committed to corruption in any number of ways. Most of them have to do with money. You know, President Trump, the last guy when he was president, he became president because he wanted to raise his brand. He wanted to raise the profile of his brand. He didn't even think he was going to win. Read Michael Lewis's book, The Fifth Risk. Any number of books. Read David Cay Johnston's book about it. He didn't become president to become president in any way. He wanted to raise his brand and make some money. Now they've offered him new ways to make money with utter corruption. And now they've okayed that corruption. We didn't even get with David Katz to the ways that they've, okayed bribery now. We'll do that next time we speak to him.
Yep.
But this is a 5-alarm fire. And really the only fire trucks there are is the voting machine, you know. We never thought they would take away women's rights. Thank you. Settled law, it's settled law. They all said it. They all lied under oath as they were confirmed. All those Supreme Court justices. It's all settled law. Listen to them as we talk about that string of no man is above the law, no one's above the law. And that's an incredible thing. Play that again, Tony, on the way out. It's incredible to me.
Hypocrisy.
But you just see how they're schooled. It's choreographed. It's planned. This confirmation hearing thing is all BS. And so they say the same thing. They're dancing the same dance. Here's to 5 martinis on the 4th, says Harry. Thank you very much, Harry Magnan. Big shout out.
Big shout out.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Tony. Play it one last time for me.
No one's above the law in the United States. That's a foundational principle that I've talked about, coming from Federalist 69, coming from the structure of the Constitution.
I don't think the president is above the law. No person in this country, no matter how high or powerful, is above the law.
I believe that no one is above the law under our system, and that includes the president. The president is fully bound by the law.
No man is above the law.
Does he have that power?
No man is above the law, Senator.
I agree. No one is above the law.
No one's above.
So it goes in America. We do have a show tomorrow, though, don't we, Kim?
We do have a show tomorrow. It's going to be a great show. I'm really excited about the show. And I think you should all come right back here for the show.
That means he has no idea what's on the show tomorrow. It's a very, very good. Well, kind of.
John Rothman is coming on the show tomorrow. John Rothman will be here. Come on.
That's not fake. That's real.
Oh, I love it.
Belinda Weymouth will be on the show.
Party of 4.
Okay, Liz.
It's going to be fantastic.
Okay, good. Thank you, everyone. You can leave comments in the comment section after the show ends. We read them all. Thank you for all the ways you support us. Really do appreciate it. Thank you for all the good feelings for me personally. I really do appreciate it. And until tomorrow, the voice of the great Shadow.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Kim, thank you. On to the After Party Live.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
Until tomorrow. Bye-bye.